Put it back in session. You may be seated.
Okay, you all set, Dr. Wolfe?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wolfe, before we get into laboratory test B, I failed to ask you, were you compensated or was ARCCA paid following the proceeding last year for any of the time?
Yes, last year. Yes.
Last year?
Correct, yes.
Do you know how much that was?
From what I recall, I think it was around $20,000.
Was ARCCA paid by the defense your initial testing, okay, initial analysis, which we talked about earlier this morning? Was ARCCA paid by the defense for any of that?
No, not the report, testing, none of that.
Okay. What were you paid for last year related to the first proceeding?
My time to appear at the proceeding.
Travel?
Correct, travel, testimony.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the form, Mr. Jackson.
Sure. What about now? Have you been paid any additional sums by the defense specifically for your undertaking that you're testifying about today?
Yes.
About how much have you been paid?
I think when I spoke to accounting, I think they indicated it was around $50,000.
Okay. Let's talk about laboratory test B, as in Bravo. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
What was different about lab test B as opposed to lab test A?
So the tests were essentially identical aside from the speed increase going from 10 up to 17.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next slide. Just so I'm clear, Doctor, I want to make sure I'm on the same slide as you. Is this slide 35 pursuant to your notes?
This is slide 36.
36, got it. Okay. We can be a little bit more brief, I think, because is this similar to the 10-mile-an-hour test, just with increased velocity?
Correct.
Okay. What about the purple-hued taillight on the right? What is that?
So again, that is a thermal image depicting the temperature profile of the right taillight that was tested.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to note that the average temperature profile of the taillight here in this test was approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that below freezing?
It is, yes.
And the ATD, the test dummy, if you will,
Yes.
is it also clothed?
Correct, yes. You may notice a difference in the sweatshirt color. We put on a new sweatshirt in this test.
Was it also an exact replica of the sweatshirt at issue worn by John O'Keefe? I'll ask it a different way. How did it compare to the sweatshirt that was worn by John O'Keefe?
It was made by the same company and had the same material blend as the previous test and the one that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So this will be a video. You will see, much like you did in the other one, where the taillight will be accelerated up to 17 miles an hour, impact the arm. And one of the things you'll see is actually an artifact of the test, if you will, where the taillight, due to the fact that the impactor stops at the end of the stroke, that force actually causes it to decouple from that polyurethane foam that we use to adhere the two.
What do you mean by decouple? What does that mean?
So, as I mentioned, once the linear impactor reaches the end of its stroke, it stops instantaneously, and the force of that stop just caused where we adhered the two together, just caused it to detach, basically break away. So, in essence, it doesn't matter because we only care about that. Remember, we're talking about that short duration of time, that 10 milliseconds. So once it breaks, it's already reached a common velocity to the taillight.
Okay. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, please? What do you note about this impact?
So one of the things you'll see is kind of that dust cloud that you see. Again, that's all the particulates from the expanding foam that we use. So that's kind of what you see in the background there, kind of going over kind of the arm and the taillight there.
Do you note more damage or less damage to the taillight at 17 miles an hour versus the 10 mile an hour test?
There is more damage, yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So you're looking at a top-down view from the high-speed camera. You'll see the taillight enter from the left, impacting the arm at about 17 miles per hour.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Can you describe the decoupling that's shown here?
Absolutely. So as you can see where the two are basically married together, right? It's kind of actually coming back together now. So that bond that we had, right? This is the most effective way that we could mount it to the impactor. It just became detached due to the force of that impactor stopping at the end of the stroke.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So in this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just a side view. Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct, not real time.
Okay. What do you note in terms of the deflection on the arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving now at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you note about the damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10 mile an hour test, which, again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video just showing right at contact, during contact, and post-contact.
Next slide, please. What is this a photograph of?
This photograph is depicting the damage to the taillight at the conclusion of the test, where, again, it's missing fragments of the outer red lens. I will note that the interior diffusers and plastic components are intact in this test.
When you say intact, what do you mean?
They are not damaged or broken.
At all?
Correct, at all.
Next slide, please. What is that a picture of?
Another photograph showing the taillight post-test. Again, no damage to the underlying diffusers in terms of being cracked, shattered, or broken.
And what did you note in terms of the damage to the outer acrylic, the red piece?
It broke into a few fragments, and I think on the next slide I depict those in a photograph.
Let's take a look at that. What is that?
So this is a photograph depicting the collection of the fragments post-test. I will note there's one clear piece, one red piece, another clear piece, and there is one more red piece in this bag. So the outer lens broke into approximately 4 pieces in the 17 mile per hour test. And I'll point out one other thing just because you can see it in the photograph. This is that 3D printed bracket that we used to bolt it onto the linear impactor with the foam on the other side that mounted it to the taillight.
Thank you for that. Next slide, please. What is this a picture of, or pictures of?
This is a side-by-side comparison showing a depiction of the 17 mile an hour test impact to the test taillight, comparing it to that of the subject taillight.
Were you able to reach any conclusions or opinions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight on the right is consistent with striking an arm at 17 miles per hour?
It's inconsistent from a damage perspective.
What's the basis of that opinion?
The test that I've just showed you all.
Was that testing that we've just talked about conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies that you've earlier described?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 17 miles per hour?
No.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Slide 45, please. What is this?
You're looking at photographs post-test of the sweatshirt that the ATD was wearing at the time of the impact.
Is this the 17 mile an hour impact?
Correct, yes.
Did you note any defects in the fabric of the right arm?
There were no punctures, holes, or fraying of the material during this impact test.
Based on this testing that you conducted in this case, is the damage that you saw of the shirt that John O'Keefe was wearing consistent or inconsistent with the shirt that's on the ATD?
It was inconsistent compared to the sweatshirt that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Based on that, do you have an opinion or a conclusion as to whether or not the damage on Mr. O'Keefe's clothing was consistent with being struck by the right rear taillight at 17 miles per hour?
It is inconsistent.
Next slide, please. What is this graph depicting?
So going back to, again, to these terms that we've talked about, this is the acceleration trace of the 17-mile-an-hour impact test. And you can see that we reach a peak of acceleration at around 5 milliseconds, and that's at about almost 270 Gs.
You said 270 Gs?
Correct.
Or 217?
270.
Thank you.
70.
Did that have any significance on your analysis?
Yes.
What was that?
Well, we can use that to estimate. Obviously, we can integrate that to get the speed, but we can also estimate the force applied to the taillight with that information.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What is the delta V as it relates to the 17-mile-an-hour lab test?
So you can see, again, the arm initially at rest is accelerated up, increasing in speed, and then reaches just about 16 miles per hour, so reaching nearly a common velocity with the taillight at about 8 milliseconds in time.
Next slide, please. Did you conduct additional tests other than the 2 lab tests that we've talked about?
Yes, sir.
Describe just in general, and then we'll talk in more specifics. What were the tests that you undertook after the lab tests?
So we conducted 2 tests with a suspended ATD arm that was impacted by an exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570. We then conducted a test where the arm was then attached to a test dummy, and then our final test was a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Can we go to slide 48, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
This is the exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570 that was utilized during this test program.
Was this the same vehicle that was utilized in all the tests, C, D, E, and F?
Correct, yes.
If we could go to slide 49, the next slide. What's depicted in this photograph?
Well, so there's a number of things here, so I'll try to point them all out. So obviously, we talked about just now the Lexus here, the exemplar vehicle. We have a forklift that was hoisted up that ultimately was suspending the arm. I think I have an additional photograph that shows it close up. But the arm was suspended from the forklift at the correct height to interact with the taillight. We have our high-speed cameras set up under this umbrella. There's another one over here. Another thing you'll note is we brought out the chest freezer when we were installing these in the Lexus to, again, keep them at that steady state temperature for as long as possible.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the approximate position that we plan to have contact occur in these tests. So as you can see, the forearm is in contact with the lift gate and the quarter panel taillight along with the elbow.
Why did you choose this configuration for the arm, the forearm, the hand, the elbow?
It was based upon my review of Dr. Welcher's work, and that he did through his static and dynamic test or paint test that this is how the arm was roughly oriented when the alleged contact occurred.
What were you trying to replicate in positioning the arm this direction, this way, as it relates to the SUV?
Well, I think as I stated earlier, it was to understand, okay, let's get beyond just simple geometry, aligning things. What happens to the arm, right? What are the accelerations? What's the damage, right? What we want to answer some of those other questions that Dr. Welcher didn't answer.
Does this
So I'm going to strike the last part of that answer.
Does this configuration align with your understanding of Dr. Welcher's alignment of the arm as it relates to the vehicle?
Okay. existing.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I inquire?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. It's maybe self-explanatory. What was the speed of your first test out in the field?
15 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in these two photographs?
So on the left is a photograph of the installed preconditioned taillights just after the install, and on the right is a thermal image of that. And if I may just point out with the temperature. So one of the things you may see here is that due to the reflective chrome here, this is just an artifact of that being really reflective. So when we look at the average temperature profile of the taillight for this test, the average was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit for the taillight.
Was it important in this testing to account for the temperature variance of the taillight assembly?
Yes, absolutely. And I will note we certainly strive to maintain that. One of the things you actually may see in this photograph on the left are these pellets on the ground, and that is due to the fact during the installation process, one of my colleagues was positioned adjacent to the taillight fixtures, applying a compress of dry ice to help mitigate any heat transfer during the install process.
Let's move on to the next slide. What are we looking at in this overhead view?
This is it's a drone video, so you're going to see the Lexus accelerate from left to right, impacting the hybrid suspended arm in the area where you could see the umbrella.
Can you use your spotlight and orient us? Where are the vehicles and the testing locations?
Yes. So the Lexus is starting here. You will see it accelerate in reverse with the hybrid arm suspended in this area here.
Okay. Is this a video or just a still shot?
This is a drone video.
Let's go ahead and play that. Dr. Wolfe, is that in real time or slowed down, sped up?
This is in real time.
Okay. Next video, please. What is this?
This is a camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Is this a still shot or is it a video?
It's a video.
What is the orientation of that arm as it relates to the vehicle that we'll see?
So it will make contact with the taillight, although I will note in this test, ultimately the contact ended up being more of a clip or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead. Did you see the impact area?
It's quick.
Right. What did you mean when you said more of a side swipe or a clip?
So I think the next couple of videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? Or, I'm sorry, in this photograph?
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left, and you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay. Can you explain for the jurors using this video what you meant by more of a side swipe or a clip?
Right. So this is where the the hand and the wrist are kind of in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with, I'm sorry, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand in contact with the lift gate portion of the taillight, and then on the forearm is more in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Okay, can we move to the next slide? And what is this angle?
This is, yeah, same test, just a different angle with the high-speed cameras in slow motion.
And this is at 15 miles per hour, correct?
15 miles an hour, correct.
Can you explain for the jurors, given the fact that this is suspended, does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an ATT?
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it.
Understood. Okay, let's go ahead and play this video. Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these three photographs?
So you're looking at, on the left, starting from left to right, just at contact, and then just after contact, and then post-contact. So as I mentioned, you can see that in this first one at contact, again, we don't have, the hand isn't and the arm aren't positioned as far out on the previous tests, and the hand is in the area and the wrist of the lift gate taillight, with part of the forearm in contact with the quarter panel taillight. And as you saw in the video, essentially the arm just kind of moves out of the way of the vehicle as it comes by.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the test vehicle subsequent to the test, depicting the, I'll say, lack of damage to the taillights.
Describe what you did see in terms of damage or lack of damage on the taillight.
There was no damage or fracturing to the taillights.
Describe the orientation of the arm in this particular test that you said was more of a side swipe. What was the orientation of the arm to the taillight in terms of how much of the arm touched the taillight? It's probably a clunky question, but I think you understand it.
I don't know if I could break it down into, I think just qualitatively speaking, like I said, it appears to be the hand and the wrist and kind of the lower portion of the forearm, maybe to the mid forearm or so.
So nothing on the upper arm?
Correct.
Making contact?
Correct, nothing on the upper arm, yes.
Okay. If we can move past this slide and onto the next slide. What is this depicting?
So this is depicting the test taillights of the 15 mile per hour impact into the hybrid arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Was there any notable damage at all on the on the exemplar taillight following test C at 15 miles an hour?
The only thing there may have been was some very slight abrasions maybe to the plastic, but there certainly was no breaking or fracturing of the lens assembly.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 15 miles per hour?
In this test, it was inconsistent.
Even in a side swipe?
Correct.
Was that testing that we just saw done in accordance with scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 15 miles per hour in a side swipe configuration?
It's inconsistent.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in this graph?
So you're looking at the hand acceleration over time, so you can see that because, as you saw in the previous video and slides, the hand initially made contact with the taillight, so that gets accelerated up first. So we're getting peak accelerations in this test for the hand of about 254 Gs. And yes, over a period of about a little over 6 seconds or 6 milliseconds or so.
What was the arm or the appendage outfitted with to determine the data on this graph?
Right. So if you think back to the lab testing that we did, right, because we didn't have, and again, this is kind of why we did the testing incrementally as we went about it, but in the lab test, we didn't have a way to mount the lift gate assembly to also evaluate that interaction. So when we moved outside the full-scale vehicle testing, we had a lift gate taillight, obviously the full vehicle. So we also instrumented the hand with an accelerometer as well as the forearm. So we were able to measure the acceleration of both the hand and the forearm in these tests.
Can we move to the next slide, please? And what are we looking at here?
So this is the, the acceleration of the arm. So you can see that it reaches a peak around 5 milliseconds at about, looks like just under 200 Gs.
And the next slide. What's depicted in this graph?
So this is doing, again, the integration of the acceleration data for the hand to determine what speed did the hand get accelerated up to. And you can see that at the onset of this, it's at rest, it's impacted, and then gets up almost to 15 miles an hour in 4 milliseconds. Ultimately does reach at about 18 milliseconds, it does reach that 15, but it's nearly at 15 at contact.
Thank you. The next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the arm. And again, because the hand was, and the wrist was more of the central impact to the ATD arm, this ultimately saw less acceleration, therefore less of a change in speed. So at around 6 milliseconds, well, roughly actually about 1 millisecond after it started to increase in acceleration, it's at about 5 miles per hour.
Is that reflected in the fact that the arm pivoted?
Yes,
and spun?
there's some rotation going on, so
Okay.
it's not translating or accelerating.
Understood. Can we move to the next slide, please? Test D. What was the speed that you undertook in test D as in delta?
So this is a 29 mile per hour impact into the suspended hybrid arm.
We move to the next slide. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So on the left is my colleague, again, compressing the taillight while we install the the liftgate taillight to, again, try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right is the thermal image of the taillight after the install. So the average temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is a drone video showing a top-down perspective, the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift.
Okay. If we could watch this video, please. Do your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm, so you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolfe, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? I'm sorry, I was talking over that.
Sorry, I
That's
didn't.
okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Is there a reason you believe physically that that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
I think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted, just before we get to the other testing, the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines?
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay. Next slide, please. And what is this?
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll see the Lexus enter the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay. Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes, this was a more central impact to the arm, yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a high-speed or slow-motion video depicting the test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay. Next slide. And what are we looking at here?
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, well, the hand and majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15, yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car?
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Yes.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29 mile an hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please. What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5 millimeter red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
Next slide. What is this side-by-side depicting?
This is showing the results of the 29 mile per hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolfe?
The results of this test.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained as to that.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What is depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the acceleration of the hand in the 29 mile per hour impact test with peak accelerations close to 800 Gs at 2 milliseconds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
This is the acceleration of the arm, reaching peak acceleration of about 500 Gs.
You indicated 800 Gs in the last graph. What's the difference? What's the difference in the delta between the 500 and the 800?
Between the hand and the arm?
Understood. Which one suffered or was subject to 800 Gs?
That would be the hand.
And which one was subject to the 500 Gs?
That would be the arm.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed. So what speed did the hand get up to as a result of the impact? So we can see that in about 3 milliseconds, the arm is moving nearly at almost 25 miles per hour. And then a little bit later, again, this is still very quick in time, at about 14 milliseconds, it's at about 30 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What's depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed of the arm as a result of the contact. So starting here at about 2 milliseconds, the arm accelerates up to, by 8 milliseconds, we're at about 35 miles per hour. And this, you may be wondering, why are we getting more speed than what the input was? And that's because you get a phenomenon known as restitution. Basically, there's an elastic collision between the two where you can get almost a bouncing effect. So when you have something that weighs 6,000 pounds striking something that's much, much lighter than that, it can actually cause it to accelerate up to a greater velocity than the impact speed.
Next slide, please. Test E, 24 mile an hour impact test. What is that?
So this is a 24 mile an hour impact test to the ATD arm attached to a test dummy.
Next slide, please. Why did you utilize 24 miles an hour for this test?
So it's my understanding that this is the upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2, and I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the end point, if you will, in that data set.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a thermal image of the taillights just after the install with the average temperature at about just over 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide. And what are we looking at?
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please. Next slide. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is a top-down video from atop of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended, attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into going to the top of the screen.
Next slide. What is this view?
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video where you'll see the Lexus in reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build up before it starts here.
And could we go to the next slide, please? And what is this?
So this is a perspective from the high-speed camera, so a slow motion video with the Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolfe, I failed to ask this, it may be obvious. After each of the tests, C, D, E, F, were you replacing the taillight with new exemplar taillights that had been temperature accounted for?
Yes, every test had a new set of quarter panel taillights, as well as liftgate taillights. And even in the test where the taillight in the 50-mile-an-hour test where the taillight was not damaged, we still put on new taillights. We did not repurpose or reuse any of the taillights.
Okay, thank you. If you could play this for us, please. Next slide. In this configuration, was the ATD outfitted with the hoodie that you've earlier described?
Yes.
At the time you outfitted the ATD with the hoodie in this configuration before this test E, did you confirm that the sleeve, the right sleeve, was damaged or undamaged?
After this test?
No, before.
Before, it was undamaged before the test.
Okay. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is still frames from the high speed. So starting out on the left here, just at contact. So the forearm making contact with the liftgate taillight, and then the upper part of the forearm and the elbow making contact, a direct hit into the quarter panel taillight. And the middle here is just after contact, and on the right is post contact.
Thank you. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video, or in this picture?
So this is a overall photograph depicting the taillights subsequent to this test at 24 miles per hour. I will note that there's no damage to the liftgate taillight, and then there is damage to the quarter panel taillight.
Is there any damage to the internal diffusers on this taillight?
So if I go to the next photograph, if I may.
Please.
So you can see here there is this kind of thicker, it's actually not a crack. So I'm looking at the clear diffuser here with the dots that you see. This line that you see, kind of opaque. I don't know if you've got a laser pointer to.
May I?
Yes.
Just so there's no confusion, thank you. So the line right here that's part of the assembly. So that's just a part of how the plastic is molded. There's a very small crack right here in the underlying diffuser, but all of the remaining part of the diffuser in terms of this portion here and here are all intact, and same with this portion of it.
What about the chrome piece that's running between the diffusers?
I don't believe that was damaged during this test, no.
And what about the clear acrylic toward the top left of that taillight housing?
It was partially fractured, but not the entire outer portion of it.
Next slide, please. What is this depicting?
So this is a photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight subsequent to the 24-mile-an-hour impact test with the ATD arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Based on this test, were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 24 miles an hour?
Sustained in that form.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 24 miles per hour?
Based upon the test results, it's inconsistent with striking an arm.
On what do you base that opinion?
I base it upon the test results that I've shown in terms of the video and the data acquisition.
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail?
So during this test, we had the instrumented hybrid arm outstretched from the test dummy with the accelerometer on the hand and the forearm. We had data acquisition on the vehicle, monitoring the speeds of the vehicle. We accelerated that vehicle into the arm at 24 miles an hour to conduct a dynamic impact test to collect data certainly about the acceleration that the arm experienced, but then also make observations about the damage that we observed to the taillight.
Do you hold that opinion that we've just discussed to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
And were your tests conducted in accordance with methodologies that are generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction in this particular test cycle?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photos?
So these are photographs depicting, excuse me, the test clothing. Again, prior to the test, there were no holes or damage to the sweatshirt. That was the same post-test. We did not make any observations with respect to any fraying, holes, punctures to the material of the sleeve.
Was there any damage whatsoever observed on the right sleeve of that ATD?
No.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in terms of this graph?
So what you're looking at in this graph is the acceleration of the hand reaching a peak acceleration just after 10 milliseconds of approximately 435 Gs.
Next slide. What are we looking at here?
This is the acceleration of the arm during this 24-mile-an-hour impact test, reaching peak Gs of about 300 at 4 milliseconds.
And the next slide. What is this delta V graph showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the hand as a result of the impact, ultimately getting up to approximately 24 miles an hour, which again is the impact velocity of the Lexus.
And how fast did it get up to 24 miles an hour?
In probably about 10 milliseconds or less.
Next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
This is showing the change in speed of the arm going to about just over, looks like about 22 miles per hour at about 10 milliseconds. So total window of time of about 8 milliseconds that it took to get up to that 22 mile an hour speed or so.
Understood. And next slide, please. Did you undertake, by the way, another question. On that, when the ATD was oriented in test E, as an echo, where it was standing with its right arm out, and the impact was on the right arm, what happened to the mass of the body of the ATD?
It rotated.
Was it projected at all off to the side?
No.
Was it projected rearward?
No.
Was that rotation expected based on your experience?
Yes.
What is the 29 mile an hour impact test in test F?
So this was a test that we conducted with a what's known as a rescue Randy or a test dummy that was a full-on impact to the right rear corner of the Lexus.
Let's take a look at the next slide, please. With regard to test E, if I could please ask you about that. I want to go back to that test even though we're looking at this one. With test E, was that reflective of a direct impact on the arm itself?
Correct, right in the area of the elbow to the quarter panel taillight.
As opposed to a side swipe on the arm?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Did you undertake to test a direct impact on the body of the ATD in this test?
Of the rescue Randy dummy?
Yes.
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the intended impact configuration with the rescue Randy suspended here by the forklift, and again, kind of in the path of the profile at that right rear corner.
How much does this test dummy weigh?
Approximately 200 pounds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a video. We had a little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video of the test taking place.
Do you have, well, let me ask you, did you intend to have high-speed video just like you've had in every other test?
Yes.
What went wrong? Something
Just
didn't get
miscommunication between the driver and the rest of the test engineers.
Got it.
So false start.
Okay. Was the taillight housing reassembled for this test?
Yes, it had a preconditioned new set of taillights on it.
And other than the taillight being damaged several times that we've seen, was there any other damage to the rear of that exemplar vehicle?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Other than the taillight damage that you rotated through in your testing, C through F, was there any other inherent damage to the the lift gate that existed when the exemplar vehicle was received by you?
When it was received, no. It was
Okay.
in good condition. No defects or damage were noted.
Okay. What are we going to expect to see in this video?
So in this video, you'll see in the surveillance video, the Lexus will come from the right to left, strike the rescue Randy, and then you'll see the rescue Randy projected and slide on the ground.
Okay. Can you play that one more time, please? Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So this is a extract from our VBox software and data acquisition system. So on the top, you'll see the video. On the bottom is the data. So this is another feed that we had of video. This was triggered, so we do have data from this perspective. So what you'll see is my colleague will move away from the assembly with the dry ice, and then the vehicle will accelerate in reverse.
That was my question. The blue, that's dry ice, gloves?
You can't, you don't want to touch dry ice with your bare hands. So
Okay.
it's, he's wearing gloves. He's capturing the thermal images now.
Next slide, please. And what are we looking at in this?
So these are extracted frames from that video you just saw from the data acquisition system. So on the left here is just before contact between the test dummy and the Lexus. On the right is just at contact.
Next slide, please. And what are we seeing in these series of photos?
So this is obviously during the collision sequence. The body now has loaded into the lift gate and the back window. What you're seeing here is the back window shattering. And this is just a few split second later in time where, again, the body is continuing to move with the vehicle as it's contacted.
Next slide. And what is this?
This depicts the post-impact damage to the rear of the Lexus. As I noted, the rear window is completely shattered. There's deformation and crush to the liftgate section of the vehicle. The bumper step was popped out, and then there was some minor fracturing in the bumper cover at the lower level.
Did you note anything regarding the internal components of the exemplar taillight, even at this direct impact?
So the taillight, as you can see, it blew out the outer lens cover. I believe the part of the clear diffusers were actually still in place. I think the lower one might have been fractured here, but I think the upper one was still in place.
At 29 miles an hour with a direct impact, did the exemplar taillight exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
More or less damage in this photo to the diffuser specifically than in the subject taillight?
Well, I think there was more in the subject taillight. As I mentioned, I believe the top diffuser
More
on this
damage?
was correct.
Okay. That was my question. And is there another slide at the on the back end of this one?
That's it.
Okay. We can have the lights. Dr. Wolfe, you conducted tests at what miles per hour? Tell me the sequence.
It would be 10 miles per hour, 17 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, 29 miles per hour, 24 miles per hour, and then a full-on hit at 29 miles per hour.
Regarding all of the tests you conducted, what did you observe with regard to the damage, if any, to the internal components of the quarter panel taillight? And I'm talking about the chrome pieces and the diffusers.
It was less in all of the tested taillights than that of the subject taillight.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject 2021 Lexus is consistent with an impact to John O'Keefe's right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
Sustained in that form, Mr. Jackson.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle is consistent or inconsistent with an impact to a right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion?
All of the test data that we did from the laboratory testing, moving up to full-scale vehicle testing, all of the collected data in terms of the photographs, the observations, all of the acceleration data collected. So all of the testing that we've walked through in this PowerPoint, along with certainly that was based upon all generally accepted and peer-reviewed methodologies in the accident reconstruction community.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on your experience, training, and education?
Yes.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to relating to the punctures or holes in the hoodie that you saw that was related to John O'Keefe?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not the damage that you saw to the hoodie related to John O'Keefe is consistent or inconsistent with a impact from a right rear taillight of the subject SUV?
It was inconsistent.
And what do you base that opinion on?
Based upon all of the impact testing that we did with the clothed ATD arm in the laboratory as well as the field.
In any of the testing that you did you ever see taillight pieces cut, puncture, or fray the sleeve of that hoodie?
No.
The exemplar hoodie, I should say.
Correct.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the rear taillight of the subject SUV was involved in a center of mass strike of a pedestrian at a high speed rearward maneuver?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
What do you base that opinion on?
The testing that we conducted in that last test that you just saw.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Dr. Wolfe?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Is this a good place for a break, or do you want to get started?
Court's preference.
Jurors, why don't we let you have your lunch? Okay. So we'll come back. We'll come back ready to go at 1:30.
All rise in the court, please.
Don't go again. Just follow the jurors. Okay.